Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited for the return, the continuation of the one and only Shawn Smith of not only just Frederick Douglass basketball, but the head coach of the Frederick Douglass Broncos, Shawn Smith. It's your introductory press conference, buddy. How in the heck are you?
Relieved is what I would say, because it was a long process. It was a very thorough process that they went through. They interviewed some really good qualified people that I found out just after the closing stretch, and obviously some names that I know and I'm familiar with, but ultimately, they decided to trust me with the next steps of the program, and honestly, Jack, I couldn't be more prepared for it than what I am. Like, this is something that 2 years ago when the job opened, and I'd been on the previous staff, I said yesterday in my press conference at school, I said, I still have a note in my phone from 2 years ago where I wasn't coming back. And the reason I had the note is because I didn't see a path to where I would be back, because I hadn't had the opportunity to build relationships in the building. I hadn't had the opportunity to build relationships within the community outside of I was known for this, not as much on the coaching side of things. Then literally 2 days later, I'm in limbo of possibly taking a head coaching job elsewhere. And then Murray Garvin decides to give me a phone call and then named me associate head coach. And then I stayed in the building and worked for 2 more years. And he delegated a lot of things to me that were head coach duties. So then I just started building relationships. And honestly, if I hadn't have had those 2 years, I don't even know if I would have gotten an interview. So I'm probably the example of resumes don't always matter, but real life experience, how you treat people, how you build relationships within an environment in a building, pays off for you in the end, because then it allowed me to sit at the table, and then sitting at the table allowed me to have a vision and a plan that they bought into. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited for my players. My coaching staff is coming together, going to announce those over the course of the next few days.
I know one of them, and I'm very excited for that one in particular.
And when I say that it's a home run hire staff, top to bottom, with what I've been able to put together, I honestly went 3 for 3 with the 3 people that I targeted. And to me, it's just a blessing to know that those guys want to work with me. I've got a spot to sit on here that I can choose to go strength and conditioning wise. Or if I see a need after the summer to have another on-court role, I've got that spot too. But just incredibly blessed. And to have this job as my first high school head coaching job, it's like a pinch me moment. But I'll also tell everyone, like I've told them for the last 2 weeks, and the people know it, it's not too big for me. Like, I'm ready to do this. And this has been my mindset probably for the last year. I turned down 3 jobs last year to stay in the role that I was in. And I know you and I talked, you're like, man, it's time to be a head coach. It's time to be a head coach. And there were tempting moments there. I was like, should I go there? But it just, something kept me there. And now what it's been is it's home to me now. And planting roots and growing them the way that you and I talked about multiple years ago when I first made this move, it's paid off. And the 6th head coach in 10 years. And I told him in my interview, I said, what if it's the 6th head coach in 20? And you got some consistency here, someone that wants to stay the course here and really build something long-term. That's where I'm sitting right now.
Man, I being here from the beginning and seeing just the growth from you being the John Wooden of middle school basketball and middle of nowhere Tennessee to coming up to where you are today and all that. It's just been cool to be a part of the ride and have you continuing to do this. Before we got to get to the basketball stuff, what the fans are here for and what they will always be here for, and why I'm so excited to kind of continue this crossover and this relationship that is so important to this fan base. Before we get into that, why was it important for you to stick around with this show when you could be doing 100 other things focusing on the betterment of Frederick Douglass basketball, but also continuing to kind of stick with one of your other major passions, that is, Kentucky basketball, and doing it here on the Source Say podcast?
Well, Alan Cutler had me on his show today and talked a lot about you and a lot about this and what we've done over the last, what's crazy now, is 6 years that we've been doing this together.
That's so nuts.
It honestly is nuts when you look at how much life has changed and where my career has gone, where you've gone, and where we currently are. And a lot of people ask me, will you stay because you're taking on? But what people don't know is I had a lot on my plate the last 2 years when it came to the duties that we had in our program. And that's where I owe Murray Garvin a ton, because he gave me head coach responsibilities, Jack, that allowed me to just kind of show my skill set. And it was an on-the-job interview for 2 years that I paid close attention within the building. But when it comes to me and you, everybody in that building, like administration-wise, athletic department, they're like, people know you for Sources Say. People respect you for what you share on that show. But it helps from a PR perspective too, because I've always carefully watched what I said on the show. I keep it real, but I try to be graceful with the things that I say, because I am a coach, and it can be a tough dynamic at times too, when we're talking about things that are going wrong, that I have to be very cautious about how I word them, because if I was sitting on the other side of it, I'm like, okay, well, how would I want this to be said in this situation? But I've always thought I found a good balance, and just the commitment that you all have shown to me through not working full-time in media and sticking on here, but it's the relationships that I have with these fans. I'm sitting at a softball tournament for my girlfriend's daughter a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sitting along the fence, and I turn around, and we've watched 5 innings at this point. And I turn around, and this guy's like, "Hey man, how are you?" And like says it like it's you running into me or something. And I'm like, "Man, I'm good. How are you?" I didn't know him. I had no idea, but he knew me. And Sarah's like, "Do you know him?" And I'm like, I don't. And he's got his phone, and he's like doing this and like talking, and he hands it to his sister, and she's like, "Hey, he thinks he's on KSR." And Sarah's like, "He is." and then he gets up, and we take a picture together, and I spent 15 to 20 minutes talking Kentucky basketball. And then he knew everything about Frederick Douglass. He knew my players' names. He knew what I've been doing for the last 3 years. He mentioned my flight to LA last year. And I was like, this is just such a unique thing that I get to do. I get to lead one of the premier programs in the state of Kentucky, but I also get to come on here and speak from a different angle, and I get to be a voice, and got this on.
You can have it on every show forever.
And I have it on every
all I
show.
care about.
It's one of those things that this is special to me too. Coaching is really important to me. But being on here and being someone and getting emails and messages and people that relate and be like, "Man, I love listening to your takes on Kentucky basketball." And they don't always have to agree with me, but it's a special bond with people that they don't personally know me, but there's a relationship there because they've listened to us for years. And it's something that I don't want to give up. And I told you from the moment I started the interview process, I told you 7 weeks ago, I said, I don't want to leave. I understand that schedules, and there's other people that are on the show, and that's what makes this show so good, is because we can always bring someone on that gives a different viewpoint, and it's always fresh. But Sources Say is been my life for the last 6 years. And when you pair it with me getting to coach the game of basketball, like I get basketball from all sides of this, and it's just a really special. And I'm just blessed from all angles right now.
We're blessed to have you, and we're also blessed to do this on your birthday. Happy birthday, Shawn! What a freaking week it has been for Shawn Smith, man. We're so happy and proud of you, and excited to keep this rolling. But we're here for business. We got Kentucky basketball to talk about, and it's been a busy off season. I'm sure following this as much as you've been able to has been a lot, because you certainly have had a lot on your plate as well. But I think the one thing that fans, as we transition specifically into the roster building and focus on 26-27 for the Wildcats, all eyes right now are on one Malachi Moreno, who you are very familiar with and understand the dynamic of his decision, his growth in year one as a Wildcat, kind of stepping into a role that nobody thought he was going to have. He kind of walked in and thought he was going to be playing behind Jaden Quaintance and Brandon Garrison, spot minutes, 5, 10, 12 minutes a game. And then by the end of the season, well, really, didn't even take that long, but solidifying the starting center position and never gave it up. He announces his return decision, signs a return deal with the Cats, while also testing the draft waters. And Shawn, I can tell you on my end that when he did initially put his name in the draft, that it really wasn't a totally serious kind of discussion for him, that he really was totally focused on returning to Kentucky and getting the feedback from NBA teams, but preparing for year two. I'm going to get feedback so they can tell me what I need to do in year two to become, a lottery pick after my sophomore season. But as the conversations ramped up, as he got to the combine this week and it started working out for teams, kind of just the reality of the situation of, hey, teams like me at, late first round, and is now the time for me to make this jump. So, Shawn, your take on where things stand with Malachi Moreno, how important this decision is for Kentucky, for Malachi. What have you seen from him to suggest that now is the time for him to make the jump? And what do you think that he could, use with a second season in Kentucky to potentially become a lottery pick after his sophomore season?
Well, I think it's interesting, because when we went into this just 7-8 months ago, like you said, we were going into it operating under the assumption that Malachi was going to be a backup guy to Jaden Quaintance. We didn't know where BG stood at the time and what would it become. But when you look at the freshman season he had, he projects to be a very, very solid prospect in the NBA, right? Whether it's now, whether it's a year from now or whenever, he has all the tools that you want to see. Now, there are areas of his game that he could get better at. I'd love to see him come back and polish up offensively a little bit more, do some things to possibly stretch the floor a little more. But overall, Jack, this is a very pivotal decision for Mark Pope and this program in year three. And there's a lot weighing on it. And we know that the deal of bringing him back, it reflects that, because he was priority number one when it comes to what Kentucky wanted to do going into a third year with Mark Pope and this staff. So for me, I kind of look at it for Malachi along these lines. You go and you definitely get drafted this time. But is next year's draft more suitable to even climb higher? Not just because you're going to get better, but is next year's draft, how is it looked at talent-wise compared to the one that we're about to go into now? And I think those are all things that you have to kind of factor into your decision, because if you return to Kentucky, you're being compensated for it. You're getting a lot of money, and you're going to be rewarded for what you put on display and performed as a freshman. But from just Kentucky's vantage point, Jack, this is one of those that if he's on your roster, you feel significantly better about the direction Kentucky's going if they're able to land another piece or two alongside that. If you don't, it's one of those decisions that when you look at it, it really sets you back, because where else are you going really at that position at this point? That's a guy that's got all SEC potential written all over him. It's hard to find that at this point in this stage.
And I think that's the scary part, and part of it was so, admirable in real time to see Malachi take a team-friendly deal to return to Kentucky. I'll be the first to tell you, Shawn, Malachi could have entered the portal and he could have made a ton of money at the highest market value playing for the biggest programs in college basketball. I'm telling you, every big name program in the sport wanted Malachi Moreno this offseason. That's a fact. And they were willing to pay a massive number for him to come and play for their programs. But Malachi is a loyal person. He values being close to home. He appreciates Mark Pope. He believes in his development under Mark Pope. Those things were super important. In my understanding, they could have milked that for all Kentucky was worth and said, hey, I know what I'm worth on the open market. I'm going to go get mine. But he decided Malachi was the one to put his foot down and say, hey, no, enough is enough. I think this is fair on my end. I'm going to come back at this number and you guys aren't going to tell me what to do. Like this is what I want to do. So that is awesome thing. And no matter how this unfolds for Malachi, he deserves a lot of respect for how he handled that. And he took a team friendly deal the first time around. Year one at Kentucky, he was one of the biggest bargains in college basketball as a starting center in the SEC, making what he did. Like it's a really massive success story. However, it is kind of working against Kentucky right now because the dollar figure that NBA teams are fighting with right now really is only toward the end of the second round, not even into the teens of the first round. So, like, if he is able to get a draft guarantee at 25 or 26 or something like that, it's comparable money to what Kentucky was, offered and got him back on, that he can now view that and go, well, shoot, I can start my NBA clock. I can reach my dreams right now for similar money to what I'd be getting back at Kentucky. Maybe now is the time. So it is kind of it works in Kentucky's favor if he does decide to pull his name out, but it also, it incentivizes him a little bit more to more seriously pursue the draft at this current rate. Now, can Mark Pope step in tomorrow and say, you know what, let's just cut the BS and here's another $1 million, here's another whatever, to kind of say, all right, I'd really rather not go through this experience anymore. I'm sure sweetening the pot would be very beneficial to Kentucky at this stage. But I do think that it is trending closer to toss-up status right now than anybody imagined going into this process. And, if I had to guess, my current lean is that Malachi will be back. But I do think that all it takes is the last 10 teams into the first round, the last 10 picks of the first round, 9 of the 10 teams can hate Malachi Moreno, but all it takes is one team to fall in love with him and say, that's my guy. I'm building around him for the future, anchor of my front court. So it's a really tricky situation that Kentucky is in. It's just something to be cautious about. I wouldn't be totally confident either direction that he's going, that he's staying. I think fans, it's just something that we got to get through this draft combine, see how things unfold. He pulled his name out of the 5-on-5, which is, typically an indicator of I got a guarantee, or I know with certainty I'm pulling my name out of the draft, and it's neither of those things. From my understanding, I think it is just, he's trending in such a way that adding his name to the mix in 5-on-5, it's a guard and wing oriented event. Totally unfavorable to bigs and playing through bigs. It just doesn't exist. So I think that is something that they were just kind of understanding that it really wouldn't benefit anybody for me to, play in this 5-on-5, but he's going to do everything else. Did all the testing, did all the measurements. He's going to do the individual skill work and shooting drills and everything that goes with it. And we'll just see what happens. I think it's going to be a fascinating decision that could really swing Kentucky season one way or the another. But I do know that the decision is not going to come anytime soon. I do know that he's going to, go through this process, continue to work out for teams, and the May 27th deadline is kind of where I'm targeting for where Malachi is going to make a final decision. So unfortunately, Shawn, the wait will probably be continuing for fans, and I don't think that they're going to like that.
No, and especially when you're just looking at on paper, you're wondering like, okay, does Kentucky have enough to – you're obviously every year you're talking about, do you have enough to make a deep run, be a title contender? But everybody's closely watching year 3 of Mark Pope because it's such a pivotal turning point of where this goes of a year 4 or do you shift and go another direction? Like, we know the weight that's on this season coming up. I guess if there is the positive, like, it's not portal, it's Kentucky or NBA. So you're not sitting here wondering if, okay, you're committed to this and you're also in a position of, okay, do I go out and target this guy, or do I try to go land this as an emergency option? But you're going all in now. Who you land and who you don't land, how much does that affect? How much more money do you have to throw around if it comes down to a situation of being able to say, hey, I know the NBA is here, but I can actually give you more or get you close to what you're wanting to do. So we know that Mark Pope in Kentucky, they still have things to do, right? Like, I don't think he's sleeping well right now. Like, who is when it comes to putting rosters together in college basketball anymore? But Malachi Moreno being committed to Kentucky and being here for a sophomore season has to ease a lot of people's minds if it gets to that point. But like you said, the waiting game is not over yet.
So the combine is happening right now. Malachi is in it and doing very well up to this point. But another player that I think Kentucky fans are monitoring very closely is Milan Momcilovic of Iowa State, who Kentucky conducted a Zoom with alongside his representation. I think that this is one that Kentucky fans should probably be monitoring more than any other. Tunde Yesufu, Alan Graves, kind of go down the list of all the other pie in the sky guys. I think the difference with Milan, and we saw today with his testing results, the agility, like Milan shot otherworldly numbers this past season at Iowa State, basically a coin flip 3-point shooter at ridiculous volume, 8-9 attempts a game, averages 17 points a game for a very, very good Iowa State team surrounded by good talent. Like, if you are looking for a ready-made, star in Mark Pope's system, he fits it to a T. What works in Kentucky's favor is, he didn't test well athletically. Like, the agility stuff just kind of was what it was. He tested in tall, but wingspan was like just barely above, I think an inch plus for wingspan, like really not a lot to, make an NBA team just fall in love with him and say, that's my guy at 24 or something. I think he is very solidified at 35, 38, something in that range. And he hasn't done much up to this point. Again, he's not going through 5-on-5s either. So nothing up to this point suggests that like his stock is just blowing up to a point where he's not going to be able to turn down the NBA. And I do know that Kentucky, hosting him on a Zoom meeting and have prioritized him and saying like, hey, post Tyron Stokes, you are our guy. And my understanding has a pretty, substantial offer on the table. Said, hey, if you want to pull your name out of the draft, just know that there's a bag of cash waiting for you in Lexington. And I think that is something that at this stage in the portal cycle with, whatever today is, all the days are running together. At May 12th, there aren't a lot of teams that have a handful of $1 million laying around and even roster spots. Like, I think that's a big deal across college basketball. There's not a lot of space left for guys like Milan. So Kentucky has positioned itself somewhat pretty well if Milan does decide to pull his name out of the draft. So if he does do that, Shawn, what kind of impact could Milan Momcilovic make at Kentucky? We got to see him up close and personally, unfortunately, to Kentucky's detriment, knocking the Cats out of the round of 32.
A significant impact. And you're talking about a guy that fits your system from day one, right? Like, when you're talking about a guy that stretches the floor for you, has the ability to knock down threes. We're talking 50% from the field, near 49% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. It's those three levels that when you're looking at it, you're like, okay, dang, this guy really fits and checks a lot of boxes. And if they fall into that and Malachi, now you're starting to talk about a roster that looks completely and entirely different, and you start to see a path to having a lot of success. Not getting either one of them would be like, oops, right? Like, that's a different situation. But if you're able to pull both those guys, boy, it really changes the view and how you look at this. And then obviously, like you said, like, how many teams are out there that have the money available and an immediate need key prominent spot on your roster and a ton of minutes available like Kentucky has right now for both of those pieces. So getting him, a guy that had 20 against you in the NCAA tournament and played in a good system that you have seen be successful, I think it would be a tremendous step in the right direction if that's the way that this thing works out. But it's the waiting game, right? It's the waiting game in both scenarios.
Yeah, and I think people are just, the speculation with Alan Graves, Tunde Yesufu, and Milan Momcilovic is they're all hell bent on staying in the draft. Like nothing that they can hear from a college team, no amount of money, no role promise, nothing could convince them that they're not going to keep their names in the draft. I just disagree. Like I think Alan Graves is a unique situation because he is this metrics darling. Teams love him. He graded out so phenomenally in every single major category. The testing results are very solid at the combine right now. Like he is trending in as a mid-major player from Santa Clara. There is a risk for him specifically to, he graded out so well in his very specific niche role at Santa Clara. What happens if he takes on a superstar role at a Kentucky? Does it translate the same way? Is he going to grade out the same way? And will NBA teams love him the same? Like he's kind of there's still the mystery surrounding him of, man, he's a freshman, he's young, he's trending in the right direction. Is like, he's a guy that you bet on right now. Like there is a chance that his stock falls if he decides to come back. And I don't see his stock ever getting higher than it is right now. Like I think there's a non-zero chance that he slides in at the end of the lottery. Like I think he's kind of firmly in the, late teens right now at like absolute back end, like 2021. So he's trending up in the right direction. He's the one exception. Tunde Yesufu, like I think he, physically, I don't see him getting too much better at Kentucky or UCLA or any of the rumored stops for him in year two. But like, he's more of a toss up to me where he could probably come back, but I'm not totally sold either direction for him. But Milan, like, he's just the guy that the stock I think is going to be the exact same whether he pulls his name out right now or whether he keeps his name in the draft or comes back for another year, or if the 5 for 5 passes and he spends 2 more years in college basketball making an absolute arm and a leg. Like I think his stock's going to be the exact same 2 years from now. So I think out of those three, one of those guys is going to want to take a bag of money from one of these programs. And I think as of right now, I think in the order of likelihood is probably Milan Momcilovic, Tunde Yesufu, then Alan Graves. So we'll see what happens. I think Kentucky does need a star talent to replace kind of the Tyron Stokes role that is left vacant right now. They're on the wing. So we will see what happens.
And I just feel good about the value of Milan being a guy that fits the way you want to play.
1,000%.
And that's something that, we talked about this all season, how Mark Pope actually went away from that with team number 2 at Kentucky, that a lot of the pieces didn't fit. They had some talented pieces, but they just didn't fit together, where this is, you're like, okay, we got to make this fit. They have guards that, really require the ball to be in their hands to be effective. So you need other pieces that can do some things. And to me, being able to shoot the basketball at as many spots as you can on the floor, to me, was priority number 1 for what you got to do for year 3. Especially if you're not going to have top 5 NBA draft pick, a top 10 NBA draft pick, things like that. You've got to really solidify your system and the way you want to play and be confident in it. And I think Milan's a guy that Mark Pope can have a ton of confidence in this system that he likes to play.
So in terms of the other decisions that have been made, in terms of the recent additions and just kind of the general roster makeup, Shawn, I know it has been a chaotic time for you, so it's been probably a little bit trickier to dig into the weeds of all this, but fascinating to get your thoughts on a couple of guys. Franck Kepnang from Washington is the most recent addition. penciled in as the backup center behind Malachi Moreno, a tough, physical, gritty big man from Washington, going into his 7th year, like all the experience in the world, but serious injury concerns, limited to 111 games over 6 years for an average of 18 games a season, splitting time at Oregon and Washington. Started his career back in the COVID year as a former top 50 4-star recruit in the country, starting his career at Oregon, transferred for the last 4 years at Washington. Your take on, assuming he is the backup center behind Malachi Moreno, how that fits into Kentucky's dynamic of having kind of a high floor guy at that position?
I like it. I like the addition of it, and I like it even more because it's a guy coming in that knows what the role will be, right? And things, especially if Malachi's there. Now, if you shift and you don't land Malachi back, and it has to be more of an elevated role, then I get a little bit more concerned. But I feel like that if you can get all the pieces that you want, and they're able to close strong and get and bring in 2 guys that they know are going to be kind of near the top of what they're wanting to do rotation wise, then I like the addition of him. So to me, a physical guy, a guy that's going to rebound for you, be a presence in the paint near the rim, that's got high major experience, has some familiarity with another guy that's on your roster. Like I think that those things go into play and factor in and kind of make the addition even more appealing to why they added him. So definitely a big fan. And those are the pieces, Jack, like in year 1 when we talked about what Ainsley Almanor meant to Kentucky and those pieces. These are the similar ones that when you look at it, that they're not 1 through 5 or even 1 through 6 or 7, but they provide a very pivotal role for what you're wanting to do rotation wise. And from an experience standpoint, that you want those guys on your roster. And I think this is one of those as well.
Yeah, Frank, I've heard nothing but awesome things about the kid's character, about how, brilliant, I say kid, he's going to be 25 years old this season. He's a grown freaking man. But like brilliant guy who knows the game, understands that like his body is just not held up, unfortunately. Like 1 season above 30 games in his six years. Everybody just can understand that if you can get through a full season with this guy, like you have made out, and you're lucky, and man, that'd be a really awesome thing. But odds are pretty good that, if you can get to the 25 game mark with Franck, it's a good freaking year for you. But yeah, I love him. I've heard nothing but great things about his character. That I think there was some concern about his eligibility with him being a 7th year guy and where the waiver was going to come from and all that stuff. I actually heard after the fact that I was on vacation when all of that chaos was unfolding, but I heard after the fact that Washington actually applied for the waiver for him, and he's had the extra year of eligibility in hand the entire time. So he entered the portal knowing that he had the extra season. And I talked to a couple people back at Washington, and they're like, there's a non-zero chance that he has another year because of how, if you look at his game log over the years, there are a couple of seasons that have really, he could probably fight for, if like Denzel Aberdeen, for instance, is fighting for his case and could get it. Like if he's going to fight for it, then Franck's going to have a great argument as well. So I would I'm not going to put the cart before the horse on this one, but zero concerns on Kentucky's side about his eligibility, even going through the recruiting process. He's, they brought him in. I actually heard that they reached out to Malachi's side and said like, hey, we're not recruiting this guy over you. Like he's going to be your backup. We want you back as our top priority, and Franck is going to be your, complimentary big behind you. Like he's filling the BG role. Don't stress out about him stepping on your heels or whatever. Like this is your, this is your complimentary big, but behind you in the rotation. So I love the addition if he can stay healthy. But I think, wear and tear and load management is going to be very important for the old fella. Let's just put it that way. Go for it.
Well, I agree. And when you're talking about a guy that's played this much college basketball, and didn't really start at any point until this last year, as we're 25 starts this past season. You at least got a guy. I just don't think you can ever have too many dudes, and we saw it this year with physicality and size just winning out at the final weekends of the NCAA tournament, just how big those teams were. And you need those guys they know their role. And I'm sure those conversations, Jack, were had before this edition was made to say, all right, here's what we're doing. You know, the plan is for Malachi to be back, and then here you are. But if you tell me that you've added another guy that's going to go grab rebounds for you and be a physical presence near the rim, block some shots, had the best numbers of his career in those areas, like, I think it's a great addition. Obviously, the risk is there when you're talking wear and tear, but that's where you manage it, and you try to manage it better. And you're leaning on a Malachi Moreno to play the big minutes at that spot. But I think it's a great rotational piece and some depth that those are the pieces that really make a difference for you when it comes to how you compete, not in and not out in the SEC.
So outside of Franck, a lot of dominoes have fallen for this Kentucky program this offseason. Really only 2 spots remaining for Mark Pope to fill. Obviously one of them, well, assuming Malachi Moreno returns, we let's not get ahead of ourselves there either. But just, you don't have to go through every single one, Shawn, but, a couple that have jumped out at you that you've said, whoa, that's a guy that I really like. That's a move that I questioned at the time, but he's growing on me. Just, what have been some of the dominoes that have fallen that you have liked and believe could be kind of, some difference makers on a team that can make a run?
Well, I mean, I love the backcourt additions. Obviously, the recruitment of Zoom Diallo and things when he makes his announcement right off the heels of Wright's decision. But more so, I like the McBride addition, a Preston Spradlin guy that played for Spradlin, so a staff that I'm familiar with, and I reached out to some of those guys and was kind of asking about his impact and things. And when you're looking at a guy, Jack, who, when you're talking shooting numbers and fitting systems prior to last year, there wasn't a lot there, but he got to 40% last season from 3 on 38 of 95 attempts. So that's a piece that I really did like, because I think those are the ones, what Mark Pope wants to do, like system-wise. And I think that you're going to try to see him get back to more of what they were doing in year one. It's just about, okay, those other 2 or 3 pieces that you get, what do they do in this system? How do they fit in this system? Can they shoot it well enough to be a factor? Because that was some of the things we talked about this year with, like, Mo Diabate being that forward guy that didn't shoot it well. That when you paired it with Malachi and some other pieces together, you're like, man, there's nowhere for these guards to get downhill and go. So you got to have that space and that space to play in offensively. So for me, with Wilkins and Zoom, you got to have some other pieces that can do some things, because those are going to be 2 ball dominant guys in your roster that are going to need the basketball to be very successful. And I think they can do that together. But the additions of McBride, Malachi back being a piece, and whatever they decide to add and are capable of adding down the stretch, like, if you get all these things in the fold together, then I think that you've got something that you can actually start working with. I am a fan of adding Jerome Morton, obviously, being a local guy that has been in Rupp Arena and someone that knows what Kentucky basketball is. I think that was a cool thing to bring back. It makes more sense if you're able to land the pieces to close, because those are the guys, like I was talking about with Ainsley Almanor in year one. We praised that addition because of the other guys they had solidified and added. There was never a moment where I thought Ainsley had to be a dude for Kentucky in year one. If Ainsley had been on last year's team, he probably would have been a dude for Kentucky. Which I don't know what it would have. You get what I'm saying? Like, the ceiling changes for some people. So if you're able to close strong here, then guys can solidify and be in their roles a lot more comfortably than what maybe it is right now. When you look at what it is, some guys may be asked to do some things that they probably don't want to have to ask them to do. So I think that's going to be the closing piece. All the pieces have to fit together. And right now, I guess it was hard to see it. I do love the addition. I know I've not been on here in a while, but I love that Cam's coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't think that we can dismiss the importance of that as well. The pieces, there's so much uncertainty around what it's going to look like because there's still those big unknowns with the front court. But I don't entirely hate what he's done to this point if he's able to close with the two that we talked about to lead this. Then I really start to say, okay, there's something here, especially if your backcourt's able to live up to what we expect them to be able to do. But right now, on paper, not enough, but it's because it's missing a large chunk of what it could be. Get those two pieces, and I think then the pieces start to fit, and you can actually see the entire puzzle put together a little bit better.
And you brought up Justin McBride. I love his addition 10 times more alongside the addition of Ousmane N'Jai. Like I liked Justin McBride because he's a high floor guy. I know that he's going to come in and give you 10 and 6. Like, he is going to contribute and be consistent. He's going to be a turnstile defensively. There are going to be times that he drives us absolutely crazy, but he's going to come in and produce for you, kind of a, makeshift Mo Diabate. Like, you knew when Mo Diabate was coming in, he was going to figure something out. Might pull your hair out, but he's going to do something that to impact winning. I think you needed some talent upside there at that position to raise the ceiling. I was worried that, like, we're building back a round of 32 team. We gotta raise the ceiling somehow, and Ousmane is that guy. Like, Ousmane is so unbelievably skilled, does some wacky things at his size that you shouldn't be able to do, played in a good league, contributed in a good league. I listened to Kyle Wilcher this morning talk about Tom Leach, and he talked about, like, hey, I played against him. That dude is ready-made for Kentucky basketball. I also played at Kentucky. I know that this guy is ready to play. So I believe in him. He's also a risk. He also is a super erratic, high volume. He's a flawed basketball player. Like, he if he wasn't, he would be a lottery pick in the NBA right now. So, he has the ceiling that I think can at least move you up to, if you're already at around a 32 team, he could be the difference. If he's a hit, could be the difference in a Sweet 16, Elite 8, so on and so forth. And I do love that you have, alongside Ousmane, there is a crop of, I like the high floor guys. I think Alex Wilkins is a high floor guy. I think Zoom Diallo is the highest floor guy. Malachi Moreno, we know, is a high floor guy. Justin McBride's a high floor guy. But I believe that trio of Cam Williams, Braden Hawthorne, and Ousmane N'Jai, like, if you can get one of those guys to be a hit, I think then you can start talking about this, assuming that you're able to get Malachi back, assuming, they can somehow land Milan Momcilovic, something like that. Like, I do think that that's when you can start dreaming big of, if we do our preseason predictions, if they land Milan, if Malachi comes back, I'll probably still say this team's a, Sweet 16, Elite 8 level team, because I don't want to get too excited the way I did last offseason. I want to be a little bit cautious, but I do think that if you could get one guy to hit between Braden Hawthorne, Cam Williams, in terms of health, just continuing to pick up where he left off, Bellarmine, right as the SEC starting, I'm not going to hold anything that happened in the SEC tournament and NCAA tournament against him. Like, I'm glad that he came back, but, like, if he can pick up where he left off pre-injury and stay healthy, like, I think one of those guys, if you can get one of them to hit, I do think that this team can be one of the teams that can make some noise this season.
And Hawthorne's a guy that we haven't really talked about, that's just been here and virtually an unknown, right? Like, we don't have any idea. We can go off, what's been told and what's been said, and maybe a little bit here and there that we get throughout the summer. But I think you're spot on with, if one of those guys is able to emerge, and probably Cam would be the most confident of the picks if he's able to stay healthy and get a full season under his belt. I think that the jump that he could make is significant. But, Hawthorne is a very interesting, intriguing piece. We thought so a year ago when we made the addition. Like, that was one of our most watched episodes last year, was talking about how he projects at Kentucky, and, credit that they were able to get it done and keep him here for another year. And we're going to see what his impact is. So you've got pieces that what you're going to get. You've brought some guys in that you're able to see on film and on paper what they did at previous stops. You're currently missing some of the heavy hitting pieces in the front court that you're trying to bring back and trying to add. But you also have a couple of guys, Jack, that could really go either direction. And if they go the direction of positive, then you get a shot in the arm here that changes the way that you look at things entirely. So I know it's been a weird stretch and there for a while. It was a really deep run of just not being able to close, and I know that that's still some concerns. Mark Pope has been sitting down and answering questions, and I thought that was an interesting approach to things, but I actually respect it because I kind of want that transparency and him sitting down and saying, all right, I know how important year 3 is. Let's talk to the fans and do some things. So it's still for me, it's always been a wait and look and see what the final product looks like on paper before I really judge it. And I think we're still currently in that spot with all these pieces, because you can pick at some things right now because you don't have the full list. When you get the full list, then you can say, all right, maybe this guy plays 12 or 13 minutes a game, and it makes a little bit more sense, because right now we're probably penciling a lot of these dudes in playing 20 plus. Because you don't really have the other pieces.
It reminds me of, as the year went on and we started to realize, the first time Kentucky, fell behind by 1 million points, and you're like, oh, this team has no heart, this team, blah, 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 blah. And then as the year went on, it became their identity. They were the comeback cats. They were going to dig themselves a stupid hole and then find their way back and, give themselves a fighting chance there at the very end. And it became an admirable trait of them. Very similar, don't judge the final product as the puzzle pieces are as a sausage is being made. Don't judge the sausage. Wait until you get the final product first before we can go, all right, I hate it, I love it, I'm lukewarm on it, whatever. So I have learned my lesson. I'm going to judge each decision, as it projects in the grand scheme of things, but also I'm going to wait until we see the grand scheme of things first before making a total judgment. I do think that if you are able to land a Milan, if you are able to bring back a Malachi, there's enough there for me to go, all right, I'm seeing the vision. I love it. And let's tip the season off. I'm excited. So, any concerns you have up to this point that you've seen that this team's still missing X, this team, you needed to see this from how year 2 unfolded to have confidence in year 3 that you haven't seen much of yet, at least as the things are currently unfolding?
Like I said, it's hard to really answer some things just because we don't see the full roster of what this thing looks like, and it's easy to assume. I think we can sit here and assume, and we want to say, Malachi is going to be a part of this because of. I do think that it's important to Malachi Moreno Malachi wants to win a national championship at Kentucky. We know that he wants to have great success here. But we're talking about a professional career and the rest of his life too that's up for grabs here, and how he performs and the feedback he receives. But just looking at the roster overall, you've got guards, you've got guys that can score the basketball. They do require the basketball to be in their hands to be those volume guys. You've got some retention in Cam Williams and possibly Malachi. Trent Noah is a piece that's been in this program for a few years. You've got the project and Braden Hawthorne that redshirted a year ago and kind of looking at where he is and how he projects. You've got a backup point guard piece in Mason Williams. So you've kind of got a lot of things, Jack. You maybe don't have the Tyron Stokes type headliner guy that a lot of people probably thinks it requires to be a Final Four piece or a national championship contender. But if you're able to close this thing out and Malachi is for sure back and you can pull a Milan, and then you look at the overall product of what Kentucky's doing system-wise, then a lot of these names and faces that are on this graphic in front of us make a little bit more sense than what they do right now. Like what we're looking at, if you take Malachi out, obviously I don't think at that point it's going to end very well for Kentucky, because you're asking guys to then have to play roles in things that I just don't think that they're fit to do. But if you're able to get piece 1 and piece 2, then I think you're starting to look at a roster that it's not talked about on the bottom half of the SEC. It's in the upper part of the SEC, and they've probably been able to fall into a pretty good team when we 3 weeks ago were probably questioning what this thing was actually going to look like.
Yeah, and I do want to lump Alex Wilkins into my potential star upside ceiling guys, because man, I think he's so freaking talented. Like, I do think that Alex Wilkins can be one of those guys that we talk about by year's end. Like, I loved his tape, loved him, watching him as the season unfolded, loved watching him in the NCAA tournament. And he was one of those guys that when he popped up on the radar, it was like, okay, this could be one of those needle moving, guard talents. And he's so, versatile and can play off, on ball, and the analytics, he passes the eye test more than the analytics. Like, the analytics don't totally love him, but if you just watch the dude play, his tape is just, it's legit. So I'm including him, but I see him closer to the, not guarantee, but I trust him to be more of a certified game changer and high floor guy than Cam, assuming he stays healthy, and then Braden and Usman kind of in that next fold. But get 2 of those guys to hit, I think is my bigger. I'm assuming Alex Wilkins is going to hit, but if you can get 2 of those 4 guys to hit, I think Kentucky is smooth sailing.
I'm big on who you play for in the coaching world.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Taking guys that aren't from the Power 4 level. I just mentioned Preston Spradlin a moment ago, a guy that I know does things the right way, is very effective, and runs a good system and a good culture. Say the same thing about Bob Ritchie, mm-hmm. and Furman and Alex Wilkins. Like, those are names that I'm familiar with in coaching, that I know what they get out of their guys. So when I see those names being added to the roster, I'm like, man, that's a Ritchie guy, or that's a Spradlin guy. Like, if those guys saw value in those pieces, it changes. It kind of gave me comfort in knowing that, all right, this is a guy that you can probably bet on if you're Mark Pope to fit the system that Mark Pope wants to play. So that gave me a little bit more of intel into some things when I look at the programs and where these guys come from. And it doesn't always have to be from a Power 4 program. You can get really good value from schools outside the Power 4, especially guys that I know run a really good system offensively, which is what Mark Pope has leaned on his entire career. I think there's some value in those additions when you know the culture and the systems that they came from too, that I think it projects a little bit better for me.
What projects well for me is BetMGM, and especially right now in the NBA playoffs, when the games get bigger, the crowds get louder, and the excitement reaches a new level. Be part of the playoff action when you bet with boosted odds. Activate your odds boost token for any bet on the NBA playoffs, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your bet wins. Get ready for tip-off with BetMGM. Who are you going with for the NBA Finals with our friends at BetMGM?
It's hard to go against the Oklahoma City Thunder, right?
Yeah.
I just at this point we're talking. What they just did, and now getting some rest, and what Shea Alexander does. Like, my goodness, it's hard to go any other direction.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. They're tough to beat. I think that the Knicks are, trending in the right direction for being in the next to them, but I think everybody's just fighting for second place next to the Thunder. But my eyes are on what happens with Giannis Antetokounmpo, because if I could get some betting odds on my Boston Celtics trading for Giannis, I'm going to put some solid. I'd like to put an odds boost token on Giannis to the Celtics at this point. But we'll appreciate our friends at BetMGM. Make sure you utilize them during these NBA playoffs. There was one question I wanted to get before you get the heck out of here and focus on your birthday and celebrating life as a head coach. Somebody asked on Sources Say, first question, what's the recruiting budget like at Douglas this season?
So I'll tell you what I said in my interview. I got asked about my coaching philosophy. And, Kentucky high school basketball is moving to a shot clock. Not this year, but the following year. And if there's one thing I can say about coaching that I've learned over 16 years, you can have a system. College coaches have a system, right? And we talked a ton about this with Mark Pope. But Mark Pope has one thing that I can't do. He can go get guys that fit his system. I'm at the luxury and the grace of who walks through my door, who moves into my district. I can't go recruit kids. I have to be able to adapt and say, I make the system fit the player, not the player fit the system. And that was something I said in my interview. And I think that is going to be a pivotal thing for high school coaches in this state is how do you use the shot clock? Continuity motion offenses that have been around for years, I think those things are going to go to the wayside because teams are going to get up and pressure you not to turn you over as much as it is to eat up 24, 25 seconds on a shot clock. And then how effective are you in the half court playing offense? So recruiting budget is but making sure that what I do aligns with my kids. And it's a year-to-year thing. And I think it's even a game-to-game thing. Like, let's say I got to play a district game on Tuesday night and I need to play fast to win it. Let's play fast and win it. If I look at a scouting report and say I need to slow things down on a Friday night to win it and execute in the half court, then let's execute in the half court on Friday. You got to be able to adapt. And it's not as much a year-to-year thing. I think it is as a week-to-week, game-to-game basis. And if I can get my kids to do that, then I think we're cooking with something.
Your recruiting budget is you just talking into a microphone on Sources Say, selling your brand to the masses and just letting people come to your door in the natural, organic way through the KSR YouTube channel. I love that idea.
I am very excited about the staff, though. And I know I said it on Cutler's show today. I just don't want his phone to blow up when people hear his name. So the next episode I'm on here, it'll all be out there. But if you're following my social media stuff and our account, you'll see the staff in place. But there's a couple of UK connections that are going to round out the staff in the coming days here that I'm really, really pleased and excited for.
I like hearing that. La Familia, maybe?
La Familia at Douglas, yeah.
Oh, we'd love to hear that.
I'm very excited about it.
Well, Shawn, this was your introductory press conference, and appreciate you coming on and answering all the hard-hitting questions for us. I'm glad that we can keep this thing rolling. Like, I would have been bummed out if you had said, hey, I'm really excited for this awesome gig that I got, but part of the stipulation is in. Sorry, that would have just been
and you circled back yesterday morning and asked, like, if you're like,
I was like, hey, I know we talked about it, but that was kind of before you became a big deal, not leading up to it. So glad we can make this work and excited to keep this thing a regular thing. But also, schedules get busy and there are going to be times that you're not going to be, but that's why we have Spencer Smith on. That's why we have, Steven come on. That's why we have the crossover Here Comes the Boom episodes with Jacob Polachek. That's why we have Zach Gagan come on. Like, I like my team. I like this Sources Say family we're building and continuing to build over the years. It's just crazy that this thing has been running for 6+ years now, and we're not slowing down anytime soon. So, Shawn, appreciate you joining us. Happy freaking birthday, and great stuff. And hopefully the next time we do this, we have good news on Malachi. We have good news on somebody. Milan Momcilovic would be my dream, but hey, I'll take anything at this point in terms of superstar talent. If it falls out of the sky and lands in Mark Pope's lap, that's all I care about. I don't care what the name is. Just let's make this thing happen and let's go win a freaking championship in 2027. So for Jack Pilgrim, for Shawn Smith, appreciate our friends at BetMGM as always for supporting the show, and we will see you next time. Go Cats.